Good morning, everybody. So the two apostles whose feast we celebrate today, Simon and Jude, they are mentioned together in the list of the apostles. It's not Judas Iscariot, and Simon is not Peter. This is Simon, who's also called the Zealot, and then there's Jude, the son of James, as opposed to Judas. You are no longer strangers and sojourners, but you are fellow citizens. That's the opening of Paul's letter to the Ephesians today. You are no longer strangers and sojourners, but you are fellow citizens. These two apostles, Simon and Jude, they traveled to the then Persia, and you would identify that with today's Iran. They traveled together as companions, and that's why the fact that they are mentioned together in the gospel really is not just a coincidence, but I think they just became partners for the sake of the gospel. They were not very well known. We don't hear too much about them. In fact, if you look at the reading today, there's nothing to mention about them, either in the epistles or in the gospel. Nothing has been said about them. Or you never hear them say anything. Yet, they traveled to a faraway land and they were martyred there. Now, the moment we think about then Persia or today's Iran, it's a possibility that we begin to think about Islam and cultures that were, of course, involved in long battles with Christianity, especially during the Crusades. But of course, at this time when the apostles went, Islam did not exist as it exists today. Islam does not come into the religious identity that it has today till 622 AD. So it's many centuries after Christianity. And so sometimes when we talk about Iran or Persia or all our present sensibilities and prejudices can emerge, and I just think we should keep that aside. Having said that, how do we take the gospel to various places and cultures today? It's an enduring question, and it's a question that we need to constantly focus, because the gospel needs to be preached to the ends of the earth. And having talked about Iran, I remember the war in Iraq, how many, 17, 18 years now, right? Many Christians took this as a culture war. Christianity's war with Islam. And of course, we were going to win that war. And then you question, is that the way the gospel should be proclaimed? As we say, the gospel never wins with a war. The reason I bring all this up is also because last year, Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Dr. Ahmad Al-Tayyib, signed a historic, what we call an Abu Dhabi Declaration. And it was a declaration of two major religions trying to come together for a common cause. It made many Catholics uncomfortable, many Christians uncomfortable. Why are we having dialogue with our enemies? What is Pope Francis doing with Catholicism? And the way I understand it is that Pope Francis is merely continuing the tradition of Simon and Jude, who went to geographically the same areas that now the Pope is entering into dialogue with, to preach the gospel to the cultures of their time, and Pope Francis, as the apostolic successor, is doing it with the people of his time. This is what apostles do. Apostles preach the gospel, reach out in dialogue, reach out in friendship, reach out in peace with other religions, with other cultures, with other countries, not to enter into war, not to enter into contention, but to really build a world order of peace and friendship. where we all coexist towards the same cause that every religion preaches. So the gospel is then not something that we take to others to change them, but the gospel is our witness of what we believe in, and may other cultures find it attractive, so attractive that they might say, let me accept your gospel. And so this is what modern day evangelization looks like. Pope Francis would call it the missionary discipleship, where we go forth in peace and love. And that's why even in the latest encyclical Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis mentions his signing of this declaration with the Grand Imam specifically in an encyclical. It's indicative of how the Pope imagines the gospel encountering other cultures and religions. And as he would say it, it's a gospel of friendship. It's a gospel of understanding. It's a gospel of dialogue. Why must we be this way? Why? Because the gospel is a gospel of love. There's no other way to look at the gospel. The gospel is a gospel of love. And wherever the disciples take this forward, they take it as a gospel of love. As we celebrate the feast of these lesser known apostles, so are we. We are lesser known people. We are not the power centers of the church. We are not the people who make important decisions about and for the church. No, we are the lesser known people. However, what do we carry? We carry the same gospel that is given to all. Whether we become the most powerful people in the church or in the world, or we are a pastor in a church, or a husband or a wife or a teacher, wherever you are, that does not change the fact that what is given into our hands is the very gospel of Jesus Christ, and we take it forth in love, in peace, in dialogue, in friendship. What do we say to everybody? You are no longer strangers and sojourners, but you are fellow citizens. We invite all to know the love of Jesus Christ. So we have the Eucharist today, the Eucharist where Jesus becomes just bread and wine. And from this bread and wine arises the greatest gift that God has given to all humanity, the very body and blood of Christ. In love, let's take that presence wherever we go. We may not have to go to Persia. We may not have to go to Iran or Iraq. It could be just our home, just our workplace. Let's take forward the gospel of dialogue and friendship. Amen.